All right. Well, we'll get started, and then Kim, if you can just let anyone in who comes late. Thank you all for coming to my TED Talk about the UNCSA archives. I'll be happy to answer any questions either during, you can raise your hand or unmute yourself and say, hey, Kate, or we can chat at the end. So I will go ahead and share my screen. And Kim, if you can go ahead and pop the slides in the chat at your leisure. Either do it now or at the end, whatever makes sense to you. All right, desktop 2. Share. Okay, does that work? Everybody can see my screen?
Yep.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. So this is a brief and high speed, I apologize in advance, but a high speed introduction to the UNCSA archives. Today we will, our learning objectives will be to learn a little bit about what archives are in general and what archivists do. And then with that in mind, what the UNCSA archives collects, how to explore the archives material in general, and then of course, given the current circumstances with a focus on online resources. And then there's a couple of new features that we'll be rolling out in the not too distant future that I'll give you a preview of. So first, like many professions, archives have a lot of terminology that is specific to us that might be useful for you to know, both for this presentation and just going forward. So archives themselves are materials created by individuals, groups, or organizations in the process of conducting their affairs, and which are preserved because of their enduring historical or record-keeping value. A collection is either a set of archival or manuscript materials assembled by an individual or organization, or more broadly, the holdings of a repository writ large. And so then a repository is an institution focused on the care and storage of items that have that enduring historical value that we talked about earlier in the definition of archives. When we talk about processing archival material, we're talking about preparing that material for patron use, which includes organization, housing, and description. That description often takes the form of a finding aid, which is a description of the contextual and structural information about an archival collection. It typically includes information about how that material was created or gathered, an overview of how the material is organized, and an inventory of the contents. So basically that tells you what you can expect to find in a given collection without having to look through every item. An important distinction that we make as well, thinking about digital material, is the distinction between born digital material and digitized. So an item that's born digital is something that was created in a computer context. So your Word documents, your digital photographs, etc., which boil down to an array of bits that your computer can read, versus something that is digitized. So that would be something that originated in an analog or physical format and has been then transformed by scanning, by photographing, etc., into a digital format that can be then made available on a computer. If you care to learn more exciting and fun archives terms, I've included a link to the Society of American Archivists dictionary. So again, please, if you find terms that don't make sense, stop me now, but if you come back later and something doesn't make sense, that's a good place to start. So what are archives? Now that we've defined some terms, archival material can include things like diaries and journals, photographs, correspondence, legal records, digital files, sound and video recordings, maps, blueprints, meeting minutes and agendas, and many more. And archives collections exist in all kinds of institutions. colleges and universities like this one, public libraries, museums, businesses, governments, and you yourself have an archive in your home or in your office. That all constitutes archival material to a certain degree. So what do archivists do? I think that this is a point of mystery for a lot of folks. And unfortunately, a lot of archival work is kind of hidden. So we do lots of things, wear many hats. We work with donors and university records management to acquire new items or collections. We process material and make it ready for public use, create finding aids and inventories so patrons know what the collection contains. We engage in preservation activities, which most often means housing materials in archive-specific boxes and folders. So you may have heard the terms acid-free. These material, boxes and folders are designed to help ensure that these materials last indefinitely into the future for use. We engage in patron service, so we provide access for patrons who want to use material either for research purposes, or we also encourage people to use these materials for just personal interest. And then instruction, so we may work with students on primary source research methods and with faculty to integrate these primary sources into their curriculum. So again, a broad overview, but this is most of what most archivists engage in. So a visual example, we take this on the left, these boxes of material that if I place them in front of you, you probably would have very little idea of what they contained, what you might hope to find in them without spending a huge amount of time looking through every item, versus these final three images, nice tidy archival boxes, consistently labeled folders that tell you what's in each folder. And then this is the beginning of a collection description, aka a finding aid, that we've written for one of the UNCSA archives collections, which is the program collection. So we make things intellectually and physically organized so that it's easier for folks to use them. I won't bother reading the entire UNCSA Archives mission statement here, but this is a broad overview of what the UNCSA Archives does. We collect materials documenting the history of the school, as well as of affiliated organizations and programs. That material can take a variety of formats, so that includes papers, photographs, audiovisual recordings, which in and of itself has a variety of formats, ephemera, born digital, etc. So all of that is material that was created in the process of the school's existence. We also occasionally collect materials that were not created as directly as part of the campus history, but which might have potential as teaching and learning resources that are related to the programs at UNCSA. So in a little more detail, that means university records, which are permanent records from offices and campus departments. That can include photographs of school events and activities, meeting minutes, correspondence, etc. Recordings of student, faculty, and guest productions and performances, which are largely audio and video recordings. Ephemera, so that's another term that comes up frequently in archives. So that can include things like posters and programs, student newspapers, literary journals, etc., campus newsletters, as well as kind of the school's tchotchkes through the history. So that's kind of what we mean by ephemera. We collect also certain records from affiliate organizations such as the Piedmont Chamber Orchestra and the Civic Music Association of Winston-Salem. And then in addition, we also have several collections that have been donated from alumni and folks with associations with the school. So for instance, we have a collection of costumes, a dance costume design, by Christina Giannini, who was the first costume designer on campus. So that includes costumes designed both for campus productions, but also in her work outside of UNCSA's context. And we also have a collection of lighting schematics by Nan and Porcher. So here are a couple of photos of just to kind of give you a sample. So here you can see artwork for a Nutcracker production in 2008, I believe. Photographs from Nutcracker performances. We've got posters from performances, programs. You can see some of Christina Giannini's costume designs for The Visit, for Strindberg's Ghost Sonata, as well as for Guys and Dolls. And then, oh, sorry, there we go. As well as our run of campus yearbooks. So we have all of this great material, and here's a little overview of how to explore this material. So archives materials, unlike traditional library materials, cannot be removed from the archives premises because they are singular and rare and unique, as well as often fragile. So they're available only for on-site use or for online use if they've been digitized or and placed in our online portals. Our collections, we're a state institution, so this material is open for public use with a couple of notable exceptions, but these are you know, rarer. These are the exceptions, not the rule. Some materials legally restricted because it contains employment records or student records. Material that either is fragile or has format limitations for access may be restricted to help preserve that item, but those are materials that we would prioritize for eventual digitization and online access in some way. So that's certainly the goal for especially materials that are too fragile to see in the reading room. So we have a research room, which is a dedicated space to view materials since they can't be removed from our collections area. Unfortunately, given the current circumstances, that room is currently closed, but eventually we hope to open for individual research use with an advanced appointment. And once that rolls out, we'll certainly let everyone know that that's coming and help navigate how to set up an appointment. We also can help with, I can certainly help with reference, research, and scanning services, but again, those are currently very limited. And so you can expect longer turnaround times than normal. But certainly if you've got a deadline or a specific date where you need an item or a bit of information, we can certainly talk about that. So some ways to explore this material online, because I know, we're all trying to do our best to stay home as much as possible. So here are a couple of ways to see what we've got and to kind of start that exploration from the comfort of your own laptop. So I will jump over here. So this is the archives webpage where we've got some information about the general archives mission, again, some information that we're currently closed, but this is kind of a good starting point for exploring the UNCSA archives. I will point you especially to, there we go. We also have a list of collection guides. So this is actually, currently it's just a list of the collections that we have, so how material is arranged into groups. That includes record groups, which is material that was produced as part of campus departments operations and has been transferred to the archives for permanent retention. And then manuscript collections, which are largely material that's either from some of our affiliate organizations or have been donated by former faculty or students. But again, all of it relates in some way to UNCSA. I will then, let's go to our digital collections page. So this is really where you're going to get a lot of links to all the material that we have that has been digitized and made available online. I will make an important note that this material that is represented online is a drop in the bucket compared to the material that we have on site. So please know that as you're going through this, it does not these materials certainly do not represent the entirety of the collections. It's just what we've been able to scan and put online, which is a rather time-consuming process, but previous archivists and archive staff have made great headway in making high-use material available online. So one of our highest use parts of the collection is our photographs collection. Here. You'll sometimes hear this referred to as Presto. That's just denotates the database system that we use. You'll see that we've got, this is more than 12,000, now it's up to more than 13,000 images that have been scanned, cataloged, and made available through this portal. I've got a couple of search options here. You can search all fields by keyword, which is generally what I end up doing. You can also view a list of series here, so that can break things down by events or schools. You can limit by date, so you can either do all date, exact date, and these have little calendar helpers here, or honestly, I've never used the exact date, but I do sometimes use a date range in case I'm looking for something specific. But you can also just go in and browse all digitized photos. And again, you'll see some kind of different facets that you can limit your search by or your browse experience by. Let's see, we'll just click on this very dramatic photograph just to see what these records look like. Unfortunately, it's taking a little bit to load. But once you click into each record, you'll find more information about that, the image as well as the performance that it represents, that it documents. I will note that the data about these photographs is a little bit patchy. Some of it is, we've got some spelling errors to clean up. And also we are, as with everything else, running on our knowledge of an event that we were not always present for. So there may be people in these images that are not tagged, not named in this description. So as you're going through these items, if you find someone whose name is misspelled or who's not named in a description, please let me know. We can always go back and that helps us make our descriptive data more robust. I'm sorry, I don't know why this image is not loading, but hypothetically, it will. So that's a great place to start for all of our photograph collections. And if you find something in here that isn't represented, this is certainly only a sampling, and there's information on the home page, on this digital collections page about the areas of focus for that digitization project. So we certainly have plenty of material on site that represents other areas of campus history. In addition to Presto, we also have a couple of groups of material that have been digitized and made available on Digital NC, which is a statewide digitization project hosted by UNC Chapel Hill's Wilson Special Collection Library. This site is really a great place to go for research into state history. They have material that has been digitized from a large number, I don't have a good number off the top of my head, but from institutions, here we go, it's 276 libraries, museums, and archives from across the state. That includes things like state newspapers, yearbooks, memorabilia, AV material, et cetera. So this is a great research tool in general, if you're doing anything regarding state history. We have a couple of groups of material that have been made available on Digital NC. Most notably, I'll point you to the NC essay, which was well, not all that short-lived, but a no longer extant student newspaper from the early days of the school. And this is a really great resource to find out, again, what kind of the student perspective on the early decade and a half or so of UNCSA, or at that point NCSA, hence the name. A great tool here that you can use, that I use quite a lot, is the advanced search. Unfortunately, it's going to take you to a blank search, but I will go ahead and search. Well, first I will remember to add the title. So if you search essay, you don't have to type the whole thing in. Click on it to highlight it, and then you can add it to your search. If you wanted to search multiple titles, say from student newspapers across Winston-Salem, you could do that as well. But I'm just interested in results from our student newspaper. And then I'll search dog with any of the words. So again, you've got a number of search options here. Again, a year limiter, and then hit search newspapers. And you'll note that these have been, it's called OCR, which is optical character recognition. Not a perfect system, but these have been scanned in such a way that makes the text largely searchable. So for instance, where is that article? So it'll bring up everything, all of your search results that relate to, that have the word dog in it. And again, this may be pull up more than you were hoping for, but this is a great way to kind of to move through this material and do a targeted search for what you're looking for. Here we go. Okay, calling all dogs. Campus dogs, we love you. So again, this is kind of a funny search, but again, go through this, take a look, browse these. They're really fantastic. And again, a great way to see some student perspectives on the early history of the school. Also in digital NC, we've got course bulletins and catalogs and yearbooks, which are similarly searchable. This search result comes up a little bit differently. But again, these are early school catalogs before those were available online. And again, you can search within this item for instance, dance, and it will pull up all of these little bookmarks for where the word dance appears throughout this document. Or you can just go page by page. So yeah, those are a great resource that are available from the collections that you do not have to be physically present to access. I'll encourage you to also just explore the rest of this page. It gives you a good overview of, again, mostly geared towards how things operate in normal times, but it'll give you a useful overview of the archives. And with all of that said, we have a new archives database coming soon. So we've gone through these resources, and again, to note that this digitized material only is a portion of the physical collection. So if there's something that you're not finding represented online, you can certainly reach out to me and ask questions about what we have that might be related to your particular area of interest. We also have a couple of other, I've also created a couple of other guides for archives information. So we've got a LibGuide for the history of the school. It includes a lot of information that is frequently asked general history information about the school. We've got some facts and figures, including kind of a general timeline of important events in the school's history, lists of presidents and chancellors, doctorates, honorary doctorates, Giannini Society awards recipients, etc. Information about the campus itself, including information about campus artwork and architecture. And then these time capsules, which were kind of a blog project undertaken by previous archives staff. Unfortunately, that's kind of fallen by the wayside, but that may be something that gets picked up again in the future. But that's a great resource for some narrative information on interesting topics about the school's history. And then finally, this is probably more related to campus staff than faculty, but still useful to know about. There is a guide for managing records at UNC School of the Arts. We are as part of the UNC system. We operate under the General Records Retention Schedule, which you can see here, and is interpreted by the school's record retention policy. But the state basically tells us what material we should be keeping from our various departments and operations on campus that have that enduring historical value and record-keeping value. So this LibGuide will give you some information on how we manage that, what kind of materials we may want versus things that need to be retained in your office for a certain period of time and then disposed of, how to dispose of them if it's something that doesn't need to come to the archives. So it kind of runs you through that whole process. Some information about managing digital records that might be useful, and then how to, for material that should come to the archives, whether you're not sure about but think might maybe should come here, how to kind of suss out whether that's true and how to prepare material for transfer to me, which is always extremely helpful when people are do that in kind of an organized fashion. It helps me make that material available in much less time. So finally, I'll give you a little preview of coming attractions. We have recently started a hosting service for 2 new database systems. So the first will be the kind of overarching archives database, which will include that finding aid data that we talked about earlier. So that will be a database of collection descriptions that will be searchable, as well as browsable on a number of different categories. And that will kind of serve as the archives equivalent of a library catalog. So that will be where you'll go to see what the archives contains and what we may have that is useful for your area of interest or research, and then we can talk about further how to make that material accessible to you. And then similarly, we will be moving all of our digitized images that currently exist in that PRESA database that we went through earlier into a new database system, which is an advantage largely on the back end for how we catalog material, but also has an advantage in that it allows for inclusion of digitized audiovisual material, whereas the current system only allows for still photographs. So we'll be slowly kind of cleaning up that existing data and moving it over into the new platform. And then once those 2 services are available, we'll certainly make that known. They'll be linked from our LibGuides, but I'm sure we'll be pushing information about that out to various listservs and on MySA. So stay tuned for those. My hope is that they both make the archives a little bit more visible and easier to navigate so that folks will know what they're able to come here and see or request. Again, I look forward to the day when we can have folks in the research room asking questions and looking at things in person, but until then, we'll do a kind of a mediated experience. So that is all I have. Thank you. That was I know that was a race through all of that information, but thanks for sitting through it. And I will stop sharing my screen.
All right, and I'm gonna stop the recording.